Did you feel like Brock Purdy played good enough to win? And how do you feel? I've already in my post game show, I heard, saw some people got to call up Kirk Cousins. I know I was hearing Richard Sherman on with his show this morning, kind of talking about Brock Purdy, and he felt like Brock Purdy played decent, good enough to win, more maybe game manager esque, but that he didn't have any negative plays, maybe no like super flashy plays, but he didn't turn over the ball. Like from my perspective, I think a little bit maybe a change because I kind of felt like this game was eerily similar to the 2019 game, but maybe something that is a change is I felt like if Jimmy G played the game that Brock Purdy just played, like didn't make any mistakes, made pretty much all the throws. There was a couple overthrows. I think there was one throw that like was one of those that could be an interception type throws that he got away with. But for the most part, I thought he handled pressure pretty well. I felt like his number one objective was to protect the football in this game. I thought he distributed it very well. Tried to utilize his legs. I would have appreciated utilizing his legs even more, but I didn't think that was like on Purdy per se. And I think so highly of Kyle Shanahan that I thought with a team with this much talent on it in the skill position players, with as good as the defense, especially in the beginning of the game was playing, I felt like with Brock Purdy's performance, they could have won the Super Bowl. So it was disheartening for me that they didn't. How did you feel about Brock Purdy's performance in this game? Um, I think it was bad. I think he's kind of struggled in these playoffs. So just interested in how you felt about Brock Purdy and how you feel about him going forward. Obviously on a rookie contract and all that.
Yeah, I do definitely feel like he played good enough to win this game, and I think he made the plays that he needed to that were available to him. What I mean by that is there were some plays in which things out of his control happened. I mean, we saw the offensive line, like we were kind of mentioning,
There was like
uh,
that, and the
give
play
up
that
the very timely pressures. There were several in the second half, and credit to Steve Spagnuolo and that defense. That's what I was expecting to see in this game. I think for me, I was honestly expecting it to see way earlier in the game some of those pressures, but it seemed like he was kind of maybe first wanting to see how the 49ers were going to um, try to set their protections and all of that, and then once he saw that, I think he was finding those you know one-on-ones or those opportunities for free rushers. So the 49ers didn't have any answers for the free rushers, and I honestly I can't tell you whose fault that is. Sometimes like the quarterback responsibility is to set the protection. But sometimes, like there was one particular play, and I think it was Baldy that pointed it out. Like it
mhm.
just looked like two sides of the offensive line were running completely different protections. Literally, two guys bump into each other on a play,
Yes,
and it
that can't
leads
those
to
mistakes
you
can't
know
be happening in the
exactly.
Super Bowl.
So, like I said, things that once the ball is snapped, that's outside of Brock Purdy's control, and he has to throw the football. And sometimes you throw the football, and it doesn't come out the way you want it to because you're not able to set the way you want to, and you're being rushed and all these things. So, aside from that, I feel like he played good enough to win the game. I was glad it was mistake free. I feel like that's the type of game that we needed from him. I don't think he needed to go out and try to be the superhero. I feel like times where maybe he did try to do too much this season or, in the playoffs, it's kind of burned him. So I liked the approach from him to, this is a big game. This is a Super Bowl. Just take the plays that are there. And I think that's what he did well in this game.
I was trying to find the exact quote, but speaking of speaking of Spagnola, he said that he actually had to adjust his defensive game plan in the middle of the game because Brock Purdy was performing so well. He gave Brock Purdy a ton of credit in his post-game comments, and then I think it was The Athletic that was writing an article. I was trying to I had it bookmarked, but I bookmarked so many things. Um, but he gave Brock Purdy a ton of credit, said that he was a really great quarterback and that he really impressed him during the game and he had to adjust how he was calling his blitzes. I agree. I felt like I mean, in the draft, I know you were just there for the Senior Bowl, but they need to spend so many resources on that offensive line. I think one of the critical plays where looking back, you feel like the 49ers really lost their opportunity was when they had the chance to go up and by 2 scores. And if Brock Purdy would have had a second longer. Jennings is open, and then I didn't notice this, but Guy Haberman pointed out that Ayuk gets open in the end zone. So 2 players get wide open, but I mean within a nanosecond. Like this was not Purdy didn't get the ball out on time. Purdy had no like, and we've seen the pocket collapse and Purdy be able to scramble. Chris Jones was completely unblocked. There was zero time at all, so he just had to throw the ball away. And it's just mistakes like that are so detrimental in this game. And when we talk about like the reason I feel like we can't blame Brock Purdy's, I mean, we want to talk about maybe stars and people that didn't live up to their hype in this game. I mean, the offensive player of the year fumbles the ball. I know that's in the beginning of the game, and I think he, aside from that, Chris McCaffrey had a good game. I wish that they would have stuck with the run game more. I know they were only averaging about 3.5 yards a carry, but I think that that's more than enough to at least have a little bit of forward progress, and then you can implement more of the um, play action because they did get into like the straight drop pass stuff that I feel like is not Kyle Shanahan's strength in general. So it just felt like at every turn, Spagnola was kind of winning his matchup against Kyle Shanahan. And the Chiefs ended up causing the 49ers to play a game that was not their style of football by the end, which is so disappointing because they actually looked pretty dominant up front. Like coming out, the offense was walking down the field up until that fumble, and then same thing. You have 2 back-to-back penalties with Trent Williams. Like, so you're thinking the 2 best, arguably earlier this season, we were saying, who's the MVP of the league, who's MVP of this team, and those were 2 players that were like, best players in football, Hall of Fame level. Trent Williams is going to be in the Hall of Fame. Chris McCaffrey just won Offensive Player of the Year, and they made critical errors in opportunities that could have gotten the 49ers up even more, which I think it was George Kittle talked about, like, you can't settle for field goals. You can't settle for being ahead by even 10 points. Like with Patrick Mahomes, you know that this team is a team that can score like that. We really needed, as an offense, to capitalize, especially right out the gate. It felt like whatever message, it felt like Steve Wilkes went in. It's like, I swear to God, if I hear anything about freaking effort in this goddamn freaking Super Bowl, I'm gonna be fired, but I'm chopping all your guys' heads off at the same time. Chase Young was like playing the game of his life, like all of a sudden made no sense. Like everyone's been like, we don't need to keep him. He's not that good. Had arguably the worst performance of his career, or at least maybe not the worst performance, but his most like bad moments caught on video at the worst times, right in the NFC Championship the game prior. And then he comes out. Eric Armstead was fantastic. There was a couple plays where Bosa was going and Patrick Mahomes got around him, but I felt like the defense, Gregory got that first sack. I felt like, especially in the beginning of the game, in hindsight, like while I was watching it, I didn't lose faith. I was like, that's fine. Like they're still like even if score wise they're not dominating as much, they're dominating. But now with the power of hindsight, it feels like almost like they lost the game right there because they were performing so much better on both sides of the football and still not able to capitalize on that. And it was
Mhm.
only a matter of time before Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs were gonna take over, and they did, and that kinda sucks. Because after it felt like there was this turn where in the beginning the 49ers were kind of controlling the pace and the style of football they were playing, and by the 3rd quarter, 4th quarter, and overtime, it felt like the 49ers were responding to what the Chiefs were doing instead of setting the tone themselves.
Yeah,
I
I
felt like
mean,
Brock Purdy played decent. I would give him, like, a B. I didn't think he did fantastic, but I can't, like there was no point where I felt like, "This is Brock Purdy's fault that we're losing," you know? I know he
right.
put it on himself. I also think just for a character-wise, I felt like he was so mature in his post-game, just really enjoy, like, having a quarterback like that for our team. But, yeah, and I'm not one for the we need to I don't think Kirk Cousins is solving any issues. Um, I heard some people saying early on in the draft that they should address quarterback. I know Bill Walsh that the people's reasonings was like Bill Walsh did that. I'm not opposed to the 49ers drafting someone. I don't know if they wanna keep Sam Darnold for $5 million or whatever he's gonna get next year, but for right now, with his rookie contract, with the information we have right now, I think Brock Purdy has played more than good enough to be this franchise's quarterback at least next season. Uh,
Yep. I
that's
mean, I
my
definitely agree with that too. I think there's overreactions from a lot of people, people saying they didn't move on from Brock Purdy or call up Kirk Cousins or even drafting a quarterback, which I hadn't heard that one, but I guess that one shouldn't surprise me either. People saying let's fire Kyle Shanahan. So there's a lot of overreactions, as is usually the case when it comes to big losses like this. People struggle to find the answers, right? I mean, we're searching for the answers, right here as we speak. And, people have different ways of trying to cope with all this. Uh, but yeah, to me, that's definitely not the answer with Brock Purdy. I mean, I definitely think he's the right guy. I mean, he was the guy that got him here, and we saw it was different than 2019, right? It didn't feel like the quarterback was carried to the Super Bowl. It felt like Brock Purdy was part of the reason that they got to the Super Bowl. And I think he could be the reason that they get it over the hump. But there's some glaring issues on that offensive line that have been an issue all year, mind you. Like we've been talking about it, right? So I think that's definitely the low hanging fruit for me and for a lot of people as well. And yeah, hopefully that's one of the things 49ers can look to address this offseason.